Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to today's episode of CAIR on Air. And a special thank you as always to our listeners on American Muslim 360. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the federal government's unconstitutional so-called terrorism watch list. Now, the reason that we're talking about the watch list today is that in this past week, as I'm sure many of you have seen, the mayor of New Jersey's Prospect Park, Mr. Mohammed Khairullah, who is America's longest-serving Muslim mayor and possibly America's longest-serving Muslim public official, was disinvited from the White House Eid event, which took place this week. And he was disinvited just a few hours before the event was set to begin. He was notified that he had not been able to receive the security clearance that is needed to get into the event. And we found out that Mr. Khairullah's name was listed on a leaked portion of the watch list. So this is a really this is a great indicator of just how ineffective and purposeless this watch list, is. That a public official, a well-known and highly respected public official's name is on this list, and because of that, he was disinvited from this event. And if, of course, this is the way that well-respected and well-known public officials are treated because their names are on the list, then one can only imagine how many difficulties are faced by ordinary American Muslims whose names are on the list. So to help us understand this a bit more and to explain to us a bit more about the watch list, I would like to bring on CAIR trial attorney, Mr. Justin Sadowsky. Justin, thank you for joining us.
Salam.
First of all, I touched on it a bit in the intro here, but and I'm not sure how much you've been following this particular case
Enough
regarding Mayor Khairullah. But to what extent can we say, or how much can we say that his being disinvited from the White House was linked to his name being on that leaked portion of the watch list?
So the federal government won't admit or disclose watch list status. They won't admit or disclose that anything was related to watch list status. So we don't have an official statement from the government saying that it was because he was on the watch list. But we know that he was on the watch list, at least as of 2019, because we have a leaked version of the watch list from 2019, and his name and birth date appears right on there. We know, because I've spoken with him this morning, that at least since 2019, he's had the types of travel problems that people on the watch list have when they travel, though that was a brief conversation. So, hopefully we'll continue to have more conversations with the mayor, and that will proceed. We know that the federal government shares the watch list internally with all sorts of agencies, almost certainly including the White House, and most certainly, like we know, it's shared with CBP, with Department of State, with U.S. CIS, Immigration. They share it with every state and local law enforcement agency in the country, and over 1,000 private entities that serve some sort of law enforcement function, such as like a private college security or an animal shelter that handles the animal shelter duties for a county, even though it's a private organization. So, I mean, other than getting an official statement from the government saying he was on the watch list and therefore didn't clear White House security. I think we're as sure as we could possibly be.
Right. And so I'm sure many people in our audience are aware of what the watch list is, but maybe you could talk a little bit about how the watch list works and what impact it has on those whose names are on the list in a more broad sense. How does it impact their lives? What dimensions of their lives are impacted by being on the watch list?
How much time do you have? So the watch list is a just random nefarious list created shortly after the events of 9/11 without congressional authorization by an organization that has never been authorized by Congress, that used to call itself the Terrorist Screening Center. It now sometimes calls itself the Threat Screening Center. That shows you how illegitimate it is. It doesn't even know its own name. And it's kind of, it's funny if it wasn't scary. They have created a watch list guidance, which they won't publicly disclose. We have a 2013 version of it because it was leaked to the Intercept. You can see it online. That creates a bunch of really vague criteria for being on the watch list. The broad top level is they will put any federal government agency can nominate someone for the watch list if they have some relationship with terrorism or someone or a terrorist, and they don't describe what that means or what kind of relationships qualify or whatnot. There's some sort of lower level criteria to, in theory, help guide people. And it says something like, well, you shouldn't put somebody on the watch list for protected rights or because of their race and religion alone, but you can consider their race and religion along with some other factor and put them on the watch list for that. Well, what's the other factor? Can the other factor be, for instance, travel to a foreign country? No guidance whatsoever. And the other thing we know, because we've litigated in this case against the federal government and we've received these documents in discovery, that though the government claims there's a careful process of vetting all the people nominated for the watch list, that they spend about less than 5 minutes reviewing each nomination, and then they accept the nominations over 99% of the people. So one is they give out this random guidance to not just federal agencies, foreign governments can nominate people to the watch list as well. It's unclear whether state governments can, but they certainly can ask federal agencies to nominate. And they accept, so they have these random standards that basically allows for a free-for-all, and then they accept pretty much every single name that gets nominated on the watch list. We do know that there are over 1 million people on the watch list. We do know that the vast majority of those people are not U.S. citizens or probably never going to interact with the United States ever once in their lives. They're probably, their name or travel or data showed up somewhere in a foreign, somewhere out in probably one of the countries that is associated with the war on terror, like Yemen or Iraq, and was just humped into a database. And so they're on the watch list. They've probably done nothing wrong, but they'll never find out because they'll never associate themselves or interact with an American or anybody who has access to the watch list. But about 10,000, about 1% of the names on the watch list are U.S. citizens or permanent residents. We don't know how many more are non-U.S. citizens or permanent residents who still interact with the U.S. because they come to the U.S. with some sort of frequency, and their lives are turned upside down by being on the watch list. They are among the things that happen to pretty much every person that we know to be on the watch list all the time is every time they travel, they can't have their boarding pass printed out. They have to go to the airport to have their boarding pass printed out. When it ultimately gets printed out, which can take hours. They get 4 S's on it. They go through secondary screening, which can be invasive. It's usually not so invasive to be, although we have heard situations to be like a strip search, but it's fairly invasive, can be time consuming, can take half an hour. Some people get questioned, including religious questioning, before they're allowed to board an aircraft. Some people get followed by security or by dogs. That tends to be airport dependent before boarding their flight. When they leave the country, then try and come back into the country, they are, even though they're U.S. citizens with an absolute right to enter the country, they are detained, usually for several hours, interrogated. We've heard recent reports that even though that we're telling you, as if you are a U.S. citizen or permanent green card holder, other than asking basic questions as to your right to entry, such as citizenship, or if you're a green card holder, that consistent following the requirements of your green card, you don't have to answer any questions. They can't interrogate you about anything unrelated to your admissibility at the border. But we've heard stories recently of people being told that if they didn't answer the questions, even though they're U.S. citizens, they wouldn't be allowed in the U.S. or they would be detained indefinitely, which again, those threats are illegal. They're untrue. Their devices are seized from them. They are threatened that they have to give up their passwords, even though you never have to give up your passwords. If passwords aren't given up, or sometimes even if they are, those electronic devices are sometimes seized and returned either weeks later, or in a few cases never returned. We're sure they're going through your stuff. That happens to everybody. People, if you have a security clearance, that security clearance will be revoked. People's like if you have TSA pre-check or global entry, that'll be revoked. Like certain security clearances or less than security clearances required to enter airport bases, transport hazardous materials, those will be revoked. Some people on the watch list will have bank accounts closed, will have immigration petitions for friends or relatives delayed. Again, interaction, because this is broadcast to state and local police, anyone's interactions with the police, if they're on the watch list, become inherently more dangerous, because the police will be told with no context that you are a terrorist. And I cannot stress how scary that is. Land border crossings are even more dangerous and scary, because again, you have some CBP agent who does not know you are coming, is not prepared for you. You hand them your passport, they put it through the machine, and the word terrorist starts flashing on their machine, which can be incredibly scary for somebody not trained to know that doesn't actually mean anything. And that person can pull out a gun, which has happened frequently, point it at people on the watch list, at their wives and children. I mean, we are very lucky nobody has died in those situations yet. So the watch list is terrible. It has a lot of bad effects. It's almost like it's horrible that the mayor was treated this way, but in a way, it's good for the community to see the effects and to see that this is really hurting people. But the reality is that not being able to enter the White House is honestly the least of problems for people on the watch list. The problems are really dangerous and really scary and really life-altering, and can make it impossible to do business, to be with friends, to travel, to do international travel, to go to do Hajj or Umrah. So this is a really serious thing. And I cannot stress, if this is happening to you, if you even think this is happening to you or any of your family members or friends or people in your mosque, people ask me, what do you do? You need to call CAIR. There's a lot of stuff we need to tell you, more than we have time to. And this is that it's such an important thing that, like, our staff attorneys can talk to you, our legal assistant can talk to you about the issues, whether or not you're interested in joining a lawsuit on something like this, about at least how to protect you and your family, and at least maybe what types of ways we can try to get you off the watch list. But just to protect you and insulate you from the horrible consequences of it to the extent possible.
Right. Yeah, and thank you for that. And so you touched a little bit on the end there about advice for people who find themselves on the watch list. To call us and to we can offer support. But could you talk a little bit about CAIR's work combating the watch list, and some of the lawsuits that we've been involved in, and how that work is progressing?
So we take a multitask approach to combating the watch list. Some of that is in litigation. Litigation is probably the first prong of what we do. And in litigation, we have taken two approaches. One is to challenge the watch list itself, usually constitutional challenges to due process, or we have to be creative with the courts and who's the hand of the courts on using concepts that conservative justices have endorsed, such as the major questions doctrine. We've taken a variety of approaches and challenges to the watch list itself. That the other part of our litigation approach is to challenge the effects of the watch list. So aside from challenging whether a watch list exists, then we'll challenge, does a watch list give the government the right to confiscate your phone, to demand you to provide a password for your phone, to punish you if you don't provide a password for your phone, to ask you religious questions at the border, which happens to a lot of people on the watch list. We have a lawsuit about that. We have a lawsuit about the FBI threatening to keep people on the watch list if they don't agree to act as informants or do other things against their individual religious beliefs. So we haven't, and then we also have challenges to the no-fly list, which is a small sub watch list that prevents you the ability to fly at all in or into or from the United States, or even over the United States. So, like if we had a case where a client of ours was trying to get on the no-fly list, was trying to get home, he actually was ultimately tried to fly from Mexico to Pakistan through Qatar. And because the flight kind of flew a little bit over U.S. airspace, he couldn't even get on that flight, and then he ended up having to fly to Brazil to get to Qatar to get to Pakistan. A horrible situation for someone just trying to get home to see the birth of their child. Again, all of our clients, none of them have ever been accused of any sort of terrorist act. So.
Yeah, great, and definitely keep up the great work. And just to
do you want me to finish the question? Because there were two other approaches.
Oh, sure, please.
So we do litigation, but I think there's two other approaches that we have been taking on as well, which is which we will support and welcome support. The second prong is sort of is our government outreach. We work with Congress. I've personally spoke with a number of congressional staff members, with House Judiciary and Senate committees about the watch list, trying to get them to oversee the watch list, change the watch list. We've also begun working with congressional staff about people who call us, help using their sort of ability to navigate the government and to advocate in order to help advocate getting people removed from the watch list. So we have a government outreach, and then the third prong, which you help run, is our public education about the watch list. Nothing's going to change. We are going to litigate and we are going to fight for everyone's constitutional rights, but the real way to get the change we want is to make the watch list unpopular, and to make people not like the watch list. Because I think a lot of you who are listening right now, but maybe not all of you hear the watch list and the horrible things that take place, and that people on the watch list aren't actually terrorists. But the average person hears the terrorist watch list, they think, a list of dangerous people. And we need to change that mentality so that we can, to help our litigation, to help our government outreach, to make the watch list unpopular so that people want to change it or get rid of it. So it's really a three-tiered approach.
Right. And just before we close out, we got a question from YouTube here. Does the aftermath of the federal rulings about unconstitutionality, does that bear any impact on whether the watch list schema or procedures have changed?
So we had one case where a federal district court ruled that the watch list was unconstitutional, and had the Court of Appeals affirmed that decision, there would have been changes to the watch list. Unfortunately, the Court of Appeals, a panel of all Republican-appointed judges, reversed that decision, and we are looking at other approaches. Unfortunately, at this time, looking at other ways to challenge the watch list. That's just one Court of Appeals, so we're looking also at other courts. And so the answer, I guess, in the short term is no. But I think the work we have, does change, it does have the potential to change it. And then I will say that, the government won't admit when they make changes based on our litigation through voluntary conduct. But most of our clients when we sue, most of our clients get taken off the watch list. Other clients who, we've seen some of the behavior against them change, more responsibly. So even though they don't admit responsibility, we can make changes at the margin. But without without either a change by Congress, success or the Biden or any other administration prioritizing reform like Biden claimed he would do when he was a candidate, but has not kept his promise on, or through a judge's ruling, I don't expect major changes to take place.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to come on today and to reiterate, a very important thing for everybody watching. If you believe or have reason to believe that you have been put on the watch list, please reach out to CAIR. We are always, prepared to fight this fight and to oppose this, because it's just a total violation of our rights as Americans, and inshallah we will continue that struggle.
And I can say that I understand, and I completely understand. You can feel very embarrassed by the fact that the government thinks you're a terrorist, and so you might not want to publicly reach out to us anyway. We promise to keep you and your case in as much of confidence as you want. So if you don't want us to talk to anybody about it, we will respect that. We understand, to publicly sue the government for accusing you of being a terrorist is a hard thing to do, but contact us anyway, because we can help you even if you don't want to join a case. It may just be a matter of giving you the advice you can to navigate, maybe reaching out to the degree you feel comfortable to certain, to your representatives to help them help you if you feel comfortable, or just to know about what's going on so that we can, use that information to inform our other cases. We promise to keep your information in confidence to the extent that you want our information in confidence. Do not be afraid. Please, if this is happening to you, reach out. If this is happening to other people, please encourage them to reach out.
Yeah, definitely. Once again, thank you, Justin, for coming on today, and we'll hope to have you on soon again to discuss more legal issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us for today's episode of CAIR on Air. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us at info@cair.com. And you can visit our website, cair.com, for more information. Thank you all very much, and Assalamu alaikum.